side by side with the leaders that are changing the world, together with the thinkers that enlighten the stage every year, behind the scenes of the greatest ideas, the intimacy, the adrenaline, the thrill of the world's greatest business gatherings. Management Live, the events that set the executive agenda, live. Today in Management Live, World Business Forum, New York. A special focus in leadership. The most recognized voices reveal the keys of leadership in a constantly changing world. Jim Collins, Rudy Giuliani, Marcus Buckingham, Bill George. In Management Live, Bill George, professor at the Harvard Business School. Learn with your people, plan with your people, build on these bases. Bill George always surprises Harvard's executive auditorium with leadership maxims. 10 years as CEO at Medtronic, Bill George multiplied its profit from $1 billion to $60 billion at an annual growth of 35%. Authentic leadership and True North are two compulsory lectures according to the Business Week and the Wall Street Journal. Actually, he's a member of the board in many multinationals, ExxonMobil, Goldman Sachs, and Novartis. Bill George, a man with a brilliant career, gives us one of his outstanding classes right from the Radio City Music Hall.
Why are we called to lead? What is our real purpose in leading? It's not about us. And too often, I think the root cause of the problem is all too often we've chosen the wrong leaders for the wrong reasons. We've chosen people more for their charisma than for their character. We've chosen people more for their image than their integrity. We've chosen people more for their style than their substance. Well, if you choose people for qualities like charisma, image, and style, why are you surprised when you fail to get character, you fail to get integrity, and you fail to get substance? So I'd like to talk about new leaders for the 21st century because the world is crying for leaders, but it's crying for you to lead. And I think we see a number of the new CEOs of corporations, people like Jeff Immelt, Indra Nooyi, Andrea Jung, Ann Mulcahy, Sam Palmisano of big companies, many from smaller companies, really stepping up to leaders. And I'm very encouraged by the new generations of leaders of what we have coming in our world and the kind of leaders that are really stepping up to lead. So what do I mean by 21st century leaders? First of all, in my growing up years, the 20th century, we'd come out of 2 world wars, a Great Depression. And we thought of leaders and followers. We thought of follow General George Patton across the desert. I think that notion is gone. The old command and control notion of leadership is dead, or at least it should be. Why is that? Because people in organizations have changed. People in your organization has changed, the people you're leading. First of all, we no longer have the craftsman-apprentice model. We have knowledge workers. And if the people who work for you don't know more than you do, you better get some different people because you want to think that the people coming up actually have far greater knowledge. That's the first thing. The second thing is, in the old days, we used to think you're going to work for General Motors at age 22, retiring at 65, and going off to a happy hunting ground and probably dying a few years later. Today, people have options. People are going to change jobs, on average, change organizations 6 to 8 times in their careers. We used to call that being a job hopper. Today we say it's building a great resume. Now, I never recommend that anyone change companies. I'd like to see people stick with companies. But the point is, if they don't get the opportunities, they're not going to stand in line for 10 to 20 years. And I say, why shouldn't they? So I'd like to propose this morning a new definition of 21st century leadership. I can define it in 4 words: align, empower, serve, and collaborate. Let me describe what I mean by each of those. You know, the academics will tell you that the important thing about CEOs is to maximize shareholder value and get the numbers right. You know, actually, that's the easy part of leadership. Any one of us can go in and do that just by cutting heads. You know, the tough part is to gain alignment around mission and values. You know, how else can people around the world of a global corporation, we're all global corporations, know what to do if they don't know the values of the company? They don't know what to do in a tough business situation. And that gets conveyed. And gaining through the mission and values and gaining that alignment is really essential. The second thing is empowerment. You know, we used to think, and many scholars will write about leadership being power. How do I exert power over others? How am I effective use of power? As though it's a zero-sum game. And if I give you my power, then I have left. I think this is a fundamentally flawed notion. The key to leadership in the 21st century is to empower people. We want to empower everyone in your organization, in my organization, to step up and lead. It's not about having great leaders on top. It's about having wise leaders who know how to empower people throughout the organization, whether they're engineers in the labs out inventing things, whether they're salespeople who are trying to help doctors or help a customer have a better financial future, or whether it's somebody on a production line trying to produce a better product. Empowerment is really what it's all about. Third, service. You know, leadership is, serving is not about serving the shareholder. You don't serve the shareholder well by focusing on shareholders. If I go out to all my employees and say, we need to get the stock price up, they're just going to give me a blank stare. If I say, the mark is how well do we serve our customers? How good are our products? How good are our services? That's what inspires people. And the whole notion is serving our customers, serving our employees. That's the leader's job. And if we do that well, we will indeed serve the shareholders. It all is a closed loop circle. It's a reinforcing circle. If we turn it around, it doesn't work. And then finally, collaboration. My friend Sam Palmisano at IBM put me onto this. He said, you know, at IBM, we thought we were too much in silos. So we've transformed the company to leading by values because we want to have 350,000 people, now about 400,000 people, collaborating to solve customers' problems. And I think this is true of any tough problem today. If you think of the problem in AIDS in Africa, no pharmaceutical company solve that without the support of NGOs and governments. Sometimes competitors need to collaborate. So just to summarize, leadership in the 21st century, if you're 21st century leaders, means you know how to align people around a common mission and values, you know how to power them to step up and lead, you recognize that you're there to serve your customers, and finally, we have to collaborate within our organization and with other organizations outside. Let me just close by asking you to think about the end of your life. You're in your 90s, maybe you're in your hundreds if you're able to live that long, and your whole family's gathered around you. Your adult children, your grandchildren, and your favorite granddaughter looks up at you and says, Grandma or Grandpa, what did you do to make a difference in the world? What are you going to tell her? I hope you won't tell her you made so much money she never has to work a day in her life like you did. But I hope you will tell her what was really important in your life and how you touched and reached other people and how you, in your own way, made a difference in the world and you use your talents to the greatest benefit. Because I think there is nothing more fulfilling than leading. By bringing a group of people together to take on a really big challenge, and I challenge each of you to step up and lead, each in your own way, to make a difference in the world. Because at the end of the day, when we leave this earth, the only thing we can take with us is what we leave behind. Thank you very much.
Coming up next, Rudy Giuliani. This New York's political figure in Management Live. Rudy Giuliani, grandchild of Italian immigrants. He was raised in New York and chose this city forever.
You have to be able to look into the future and see where you want to be.
This New York's emblematic figure started his career as district attorney at the young age of 29. Fighting narcotics and mafia carried him successfully into the political scene.
You got to force yourself to be a positive person. If you want to be a leader, you have to be an optimist.
From 1994 to 2002, he held the position of New York's mayor, reducing crime in a 44% and transforming the city in a role model around the world. Giuliani earned the title of hero after 9/11. Calm and steady for making decisions.
The question is, are leaders born or made?
Giuliani always showed his natural ability to lead and take into control.
Mayor Giuliani, great to see you.
Great to see you, Maria.
Thanks so much. Mr. Mayor, this is the question from our LinkedIn that we've asked the audience as well. What do you think are the 3 most important qualities of a successful leader today?
I think that the I'll pick one actually, and that's openness, transparency. The business, even public companies, have for very long been private, thought of themselves as private. Starting about 30 years ago, that all changed. And CEOs of public companies became no different than a political leader. They had vast constituencies to deal with. Some CEOs have handled that transition magnificently, and some haven't. And the answer is transparency. And what I said before, making sure that deals never get so complicated that they can't be explained to you and you don't understand them. Never letting your company get out of control. I think that quality of, if you're transparent and you've got to explain everything to your constituents, whether they're your shareholders or the public, then everything has to be explained to you. And it protects you against things going on in your company that you don't know. That would be the quality that I think would be the most important, that might have been lacking in some of these situations. I think the others were there. I think these were people of integrity. I think these were people that work very, very hard. I think these were people who had the best interest of their company and even of society in many cases. But I think there was still this lingering idea that these are private companies. Even when they are private companies, many of them are so intertwined with the public that they have enormous public responsibilities. And if you think of it yourself as having to be transparent, and your company be transparent, you avoid a lot of these. If you feel there's an obligation to explain what we're doing and explain it honestly.
They didn't know they had credit default swaps.
They knew it, but I don't think they could take apart the details of it. And even when they were asked to explain it, they would very often not be able to explain it, which was sort of a telltale sign to me that they didn't really completely understand it.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, former Mayor Giuliani. Sean McNulty here from British Columbia, Canada. I'm wondering, were you in the running for vice presidency, and was it a position you aspired to hold?
I wasn't in the running, and I wasn't aspiring to it.
Oh. Thank you.
Thank you.
Why was that?
First of all, I don't think you run for vice president. I think the presidential candidate makes the decision, so I wasn't seeking it.
So once you decided, you were out.
I don't think it's a job that many people want. I think they take it when it's offered to them. I think a lot of people take the job because they feel it's their patriotic duty to do it. You know, presidential candidate says, "You're the one I want," but it's almost as if, if this cup passes away, that's okay.
Here are the top 3 items on the agenda from your standpoint.
Well, always
what are they?
The top item for every president is keep America safe against foreign aggression. In this particular case, terrorism, and both in the United States and abroad. If America is not safe, then none of the rest of it works. The second thing has to be to get our economy straightened out. And there are several subparts to that. Energy diversity, fixing our healthcare system, fixing Social Security. If you want a new thing they can emphasize, another thing that I think is at the core of this, trying to get Americans to save more money. I mean, a major macroeconomic problem is America, I think this is correct, America spends just about what our GDP is. That would mean as a household, you'd be spending what you're worth every year. And you look at economies like China, other economies where people save a lot of money. I mean, China actually may have too many savings, and we're in the direction of having too few. So we should have policies that encourage savings. Low interest rates and lowering the interest don't encourage savings. They encourage debt. A lot of other things encourage debt. Low minimum payments on credit card bills, which for many unsophisticated people fake them into thinking they're paying their bill until it's too late. I mean, we've got to look at things like this, and we've got to put the emphasis in our society toward encouraging people to save more money.
Mayor Giuliani, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Mayor, for being with us.
Thank you, Eduardo.
We were discussing earlier today and on stage on the presidential elections. And sometimes we say people like one of the candidates, people dislike the other. But what would be, according to you, a true criteria to select a presidential candidate, a president?
I always think of it when I make that choice, like you're selecting somebody for a job.
Yes.
And it's a real big one and a really important one. Who has the best qualifications? Who has the most experience? And who do you think will do best in that job? If you run a business, you're responsible for 100 people, for 1,000 people, 2,000 people. You're responsible for making sure the taxes are paid, making sure the budget is correct for next year and the year after. That creates a discipline that you can translate into running the government, or a discipline you don't have, which can turn out to be a disaster if you're trying to run the government. I mean, I made the transition from being a lawyer to being a mayor, and it's a difficult transition. I mean, there's a lot you have to learn about management when you run a very large organization.
Well, that's another issue. If experience is so relevant, why aren't more CEOs running for president?
You know, that's a very good question. I think they do a good job. I do. I look at Mayor Bloomberg in New York. I look at a couple of other examples of that. First of all, it hasn't been our tradition in America.
Okay.
Our tradition in America has been that when you run for president, you have a political background. I can't think of someone that was elected right out of business to the presidency. I think there is something you have to have some political experience.
Why?
It doesn't have to be a lot, but I mean, a perfect background will be someone who is successful in business and then has political experience, because it is different. It's a different kind of management. It's much more being responsive to the public. There's much more emotion involved in it, because when you're dealing with the public and you're leading a government rather than leading a business, there are so many diverse needs that people have, and you've got to be attuned to all of them. When you're running a business, you're running a much narrower area.
Okay.
Maybe it's communication, maybe it's healthcare, maybe it's finance, but it's a much narrower area, and your constituents are much smaller. When I was the mayor of New York, I thought of myself as having 8.1 million bosses.
Okay.
And all the people in the city were my boss. And when you're mayor of New York, you feel that way because they tell you what to do.
Yes.
They come right up to you and tell you what they want and what to do. In a business, you don't often have that kind of pressure. So you have to learn how to make that transition. But once having made it, the art of management is the same. You're still running agencies. You're trying to keep them within budget. Some ways government is harder because there is no profit and loss. In business, you have a natural discipline. You got to make money.
Yes.
In government, you don't have a natural discipline.
You once told me a story about someone who asked you about education, and you gave a business answer instead of a political answer. Can you share that story?
I remember that. I was preparing for a debate, and I was asked, what would you do about education? And I gave one. I said I'd do 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the person who was doing it was Roger Ailes, and Roger Ailes said to me, you get an A in education and an F in politics. You get an A in education because those are the 4 things to do. You get an F in politics because what you first want to do is connect with someone in politics. And the best answer would be, I have 2 children. I care about education. I believe education should be as good for all children as it is for mine. And I think our future is tied up in education for our kids. He said, after you said that, then you can go on to all of the issues. But people want to know that you connect with them, that you understand what they feel, which is probably a good idea in business as well, but not as necessary.
What's your view on the financial crisis?
My view on the financial crisis is that it happened because we weren't paying attention to fundamentals.
Okay.
Right at the very core of our business enterprises. Fundamentals like, how much money should you actually loan? How much leverage should there really be in a deal? If it's leveraged too much, aren't you taking the risk that the economy will have a downturn, and then a mere 4, 5, 6, 7, 8% downturn, and your investment can go under? Too many people had gotten themselves into the notion that the economy is just going to continue to rise.
Yes.
And here's the part of it that is totally baffling. The one thing that you can say about a capitalist economy is it never just invariably rises or declines. It's cyclical.
Yes.
So that would say you've got to build risk analysis into everything you do. And risk analysis would have not allowed these deals to be as leveraged as they were.
And just as a closing question, how would you define Rudy Giuliani as a person?
I'm a great guy. I enjoy life. I enjoy what I'm doing. Whatever it is that I'm doing, I find a way to enjoy it and make it interesting for myself, hopefully for the people around me. I have tremendous interests in things other than work, like baseball and golf, and I'm a very
passionate man.
I'm a very lucky person too. I've had more success than you deserve, and I'm a very lucky person.
Thank you very much, Rudy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, Marcus Buckingham covers the story of the great leaders, from Warren Buffett to Bill Gates.
What a great company is a deliberate accumulation of lots and lots and lots and lots of great teams. At work, you have an opportunity to do what you do best every day. That isn't the only question you should ask, it's just the most important one.
Unveiled together with the greatest expert, the keys to reach personal success in Management Live.
Why shouldn't you do really improving? So they mean nothing. Based on how well they did 15 years out.
Marcus Buckingham. How to become a great leader is the everlasting dilemma of the executive world. With a vast trajectory in Gallup Consultancy Group, Marcus Buckingham, Cambridge graduate in political science, introduced an innovative overlook in the high-performance field. Buckingham promotes the personal capabilities revolution, meaning that in order to reach professional success, every person must discover and develop its personal potential. Disney, Toyota, and Coca-Cola are some of the companies that implement his keys of efficiency. Buckingham interviewed more than 1 million leaders and top executives. His thorough field investigation set the basis for his books, First, Break All the Rules, and Now, Discover Your Strengths, which immediately headed the bestsellers rankings. Sir Marcus Buckingham.
Build on your strengths and find ways to manage around your weaknesses. Probably something you've long believed. Obviously, I don't know you, but if you can cast your mind back to when you were 6 or 7 years old in school, I'm sure that even back then there were certain subjects that you were drawn to, weren't there? Certain teachers that really got your attention. Certain situations where you got so in the zone, so focused that the bell rang, you looked up and a whole hour had gone by. You might not have called those your strengths, perhaps, back then, but even back then, you knew you had something, didn't you? Something special. And I imagine that all of you held out hope. If you can cast your mind back to then, you all held out hope that at some point in your life, you'd get a chance to express that special something. If you're in business, one of your key questions should be, why do teams doing the same work, some teams doing the same work as other teams, massively outperform them in terms of productivity or profitability or employee retention? All a great company is a deliberate accumulation of lots and lots and lots and lots of great teams. That's what makes a great company. So we've got to know what the difference is within a company. What's the difference in performance? What creates it? Now, you might have your own theory. But while I was at Gallup, what we did at Gallup was we asked questions. We were a question-asking company. So our approach was, all right, well, let's just go ask the people who work in the teams on your right a whole lot of questions. And we'll ask the people in the teams on the left the same questions. And then we'll do it again and again and again and again and again. And we'll throw out any employee survey question where there's no difference between what the highly productive teams say or the less productive teams say. We'll throw all those questions out. And we'll focus in only on those very few questions which seem to sort to performance, where the most productive say strongly agree and the rest don't. We slice dice 17 ways till Sunday, and what you may not know is that it ends up that one question beats pretty much all the others. So that if you were to say to me, Marcus, look, here's 50 teams. 50 teams from my company, 25 are measurably outperforming these other 25. And you have but one question that you can ask to try and figure out who's on which team. You've only got one question. If you put me through that test, then this is the question I'd use. It's in the workbooks if you want to refer to it. At work, do you have the opportunity to do what you do best every day? At work, do you have an opportunity to do what you do best every day? That isn't the only question you should ask. It's just the most important one. This isn't the only lever you should pull to build a high-performing team. It's just the master lever. Just think about it for yourself. Just think about whether you could strongly agree to that question. Because when you can, when you feel like, you know what, my manager knows me, wants the best of me, somehow has got me to express the best of myself, somehow when you can answer yes to that, everything else works better. Expectations seem clearer to you. Your sense of mission and purpose seems more powerful to you. Relationships are more authentic to you. Praise, when it comes your way, rings truer to you. Everything seems to work better on teams where people say they have a chance to do what they do best every day. And of course, I'm not saying it's easy to build teams like that, not least because some people are delusional about what they do best. And how annoying are they? But apparently it doesn't really seem to matter. It doesn't really seem to matter. All we know is that people who say they have a chance to do what they do best, even if they're slightly positively deluded about what they do best, those teams where people say, you know what, I have a chance to do what I do best, are more productive than those teams where people say that they can't. By more productive, I mean that they are more profitable, they are higher performing, they show up for work more, they steal less. When they are at work, they have fewer accidents, and when they have the accidents, they're less likely to sue you. Whatever your business outcome metric is, everything seems to work better when you can say to yourself, even slightly deludedly, I have a chance to do what I do best. And of course, it's not easy because sometimes you don't get along with your manager. I mean, clearly, the focus a lot of my company is on what managers do differently, what the best ones do. But sometimes you don't get along with your manager. You look up at your manager and you go, you know, you deplete me. I don't know how you do it, and I wish you wouldn't, because I walk in big and strong every day, but I walk out tiny. Every day you shrink me. Wish you wouldn't, but you do. So that happens. I mean, I'm sure it's happened with you. It's happened with me. Sometimes you just don't gel. But I tell you what, it's really hard to build a team, deliberately build a team at any level in the organization where people feel as though they have a chance to express their strength, something that you wanted for yourself since you were 7. It's really hard to build a team like that if you're not trying. We lived in a world that was fascinated by weaknesses and tended to take strengths for granted. That's the world we lived in. We thought that excellence was just the opposite of failure. You want to understand excellence, study failure, and flip it. Now, things have changed pretty significantly since then. Some of you are aware of some of these changes. We now, I think, realize that excellence has got its own pattern. You can't really infer great health from studying sick people. You can't really infer what joy and satisfaction is from studying depressed people. You can't learn much about great marriage from studying divorced people. Pretty much everywhere you look, we seem to realize that good isn't just the opposite of bad. It's just different. Because if you take bad and then say, don't do that, you just get not bad, which is different than good or great, isn't it? Every one of you grew up wanting to express the best of yourself. You wanted a job, and I know you weren't totally idealistic. You knew there was a real world out there, but you wanted a job which gave you a chance to express the best of yourself. And when we ask you repeatedly, do you? 14% of us say that we do. In a room like this one, it's, I don't know, it's the first 10 rows here. All the rest of us are somehow disengaged from our work. Here's one way to move the number. Change the systems. Absolutely. Change the people systems. Change the way we select, measure, promote, pay. And we should change some of those systems, no question. Most performance appraisal systems are woefully remedial. But I wouldn't start there. I'd start here, with yourself. You look at the best teams, and they're operating under this assumption. A good team member deliberately volunteers their strengths to the team most of the time. And then, of course, surrounds themselves with people who are strengthened by the very things that weaken them. Just by way of closing, I'll give you one example of a person like this who's a classic. Warren Buffett, used as an example for many things, but he's always lived his life this way. 2 years ago, he did something odd, didn't he? He gave away $31 billion to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and people said, at a press conference actually, where people said, why did you do that? And he had two answers, one of them predictable, the other one just weird. The predictable one was, he said, I gave it to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation because they can give it away better than I can. Typical, practical, Berkshire Hathaway Buffett-like answer. They are better than me. I'll give it to them. They'll give it away. And if he'd have left it at that, we'd have gone, oh, that Buffett, just a little bit smarter than most of us. But he didn't leave it at that. He went on, and he said, besides, philanthropy's no fun for me. Who says that? Some of us may occasionally think that, but who comes right out and says, oh, squeezing 1 more ounce of profit out of my companies, brilliant. Charity, schmarity, boring, big yawn. Oh, $1 more. Ooh. I mean, who says that? It takes an awful lot of self-assurance to be able to stand up in front of the world. It'd be like you as a leader standing up and going, you know what? I don't have a lick of vision. I don't. I'm visionless. Look around the corner, can't see a thing. I can't. And yet, weirdly enough, some of you can't. You don't like any of this visioning thing. You can't see any land of milk and honey stuff. You just can't see it. You can't. You think it's silly, it's boring, a waste of time. And yet there's a lot of pressure on you to stand up and say, oh yeah, I got vision, when deep down you know you don't. So although it looks pretty trite on the page here, it takes a lot of self-assurance to stand up and go, I don't have this. It doesn't invigorate me. And of course, when he was doing that, he wasn't saying this is stupid work. Charity is stupid work. He was saying something a lot more sophisticated, wasn't he? He was saying, I so respect the goals of charity. They can't be entrusted to a guy like me. I'm not saying it'll be easy. I'm not saying it'll be without risk. But just to close, here's a lovely line on risk that you might take with you. It's from Anais Nin. She said, and the day came when the risk it took to remain all tight in the bud became greater than the risk it took to blossom. Well, there's a lot of risk to betting your life on your strengths, but I would argue that for you, from this day forward, the risk of not doing so is far greater. Benjamin Franklin had a lovely line on risk. He called them sundials. I mean, a lovely line on strengths, wasted strengths. He called them sundials in the shade. There's a lot more that we could talk about this afternoon, but I hope at least as a beginning, I've given you some ways of thinking and some ways of perceiving the world so that you can shine a light and so put your strengths to work. Thanks very much.